The gala was filled with the glittering elite celebrities, billionaires, and powerful influencers, but in the back of the room stood Mia, a young black girl with nothing but a dream, and a voice that had yet to be discovered. She had come to perform, but what she didn't expect was for Richard Vance, one of the world's wealthiest men, to call her out from the crowd. His words were dripping with mockery, a challenge thrown at her in front of an audience that didn't believe in her. He asked her to sing, and the room laughed at the thought. But Mia didn't back down. She stepped forward, took a deep breath, and then her voice soared. In that instant, everything changed. The hall fell silent, and Richard's arrogance turned into awe. This is Mia's story, a story of triumph, defiance, and unshakable belief in herself. It was a bright, warm afternoon, and the grand ballroom echoed with the hum of conversation. In a corner of the room, mingling among a crowd of celebrities, influencers and billionaires, was a young girl named Mia. Mia wasn't like the others in the room. She wasn't wearing an expensive designer dress, and her shoes were a far cry from the ones that glittered around her. But Mia wasn't there for the glitz and glamour. She was there because her voice had brought her into this exclusive event, where the world's wealthiest and most influential people had gathered for a charity gala. Mia had been discovered by a music producer just a few months ago, her raw talent so powerful that it made the producer take notice. But despite her newfound opportunities, she had always remained grounded, remembering her humble beginnings and the struggles her family had gone through. Today, she stood near the back of the room, watching as the event unfolded in front of her. She could feel the eyes of the rich and powerful around her, not quite judging her but still sizing her up. They didn't see her as an equal. To them, she was just another young girl with a dream that probably wouldn't survive the realities of the industry. But Mia wasn't discouraged. She had learned early in life that people like her, people from backgrounds like hers, had to work harder than anyone else to be seen, to be heard. Her focus shifted when the host of the evening, a tall, sharply dressed billionaire named Richard Vance, took to the stage. Richard Vance was the definition of success. A self-made billionaire who had started from nothing, his name was synonymous with power, wealth, and influence. He was known for his sharp wit, his quick tongue, and his ability to make anyone feel small with just a few words. As he stood there, the crowd's murmurs quieted and all attention turned to him. Richard had heard about Mia. He knew she was performing at the gala, but he wasn't sure if she was worth the hype. He had heard about her incredible voice, but in his world, talent was just a small part of the equation. People like him, people who had everything, were used to seeing talent as something that could be bought, molded, and packaged for a profit. He didn't think much of the so-called raw talent he was told about. He wanted to see it for himself, and so, with a mischievous smile on his face, he called out to the crowd, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've heard so much about the young lady performing tonight. I think it's only fair that we get a preview," Richard said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the microphone. "Mia, darling, why don't you come up here and sing for us? I think we could all use a bit of entertainment." The crowd fell silent, unsure of what to make of Richard's words. They all turned toward Mia. The girl who had been standing quietly at the back of the room, her head down, suddenly became the center of attention. Mia's heart raced. She hadn't expected this. She had come here to perform, yes, but in her mind it was supposed to be a carefully planned moment, with the right lighting and music to support her. She didn't expect to be put on the spot in front of a room full of strangers, especially not by someone like Richard Vance. But Mia was no stranger to pressure. She had learned from a young age to take whatever life threw at her and turn it into something beautiful. And this moment was no different. With steady hands, Mia walked up to the stage, her steps measured but graceful. The audience watched her closely, waiting to see if she would crumble under the billionaire's taunt. But Mia didn't falter. As she took her place on the stage, she glanced out at the crowd, and for a moment her nerves disappeared. She focused only on the music. Richard, with a smug look on his face, leaned back into his chair, clearly expecting her to fail. In his mind, this was just another case of a girl who thought she had talent, but didn't know how to back it up. He had seen it all before, but as the first note left Mia's lips, something incredible happened. The entire room fell silent. It wasn't just her voice that held the audience captive. It was the raw emotion that poured from every word she sang. It was as if her soul was being laid bare for everyone to see. Her voice soared, effortlessly hitting notes that most seasoned singers could only dream of. The sound was rich, powerful, and hauntingly beautiful. Richard's smug smile slowly faded as the realization dawned on him. He had underestimated her. The audience, initially unsure of what to expect, was now completely captivated. There wasn't a single person in the room who wasn't drawn into the magic of Mia's performance. Every note seemed to resonate deep within them, and as her voice rose higher and higher, it was as if she was speaking directly to their hearts. And then, as Mia hit a perfect high note, the room went completely quiet. The only sound was her voice, filling the space with a beauty that no one could deny. At that moment, Richard Vance, who had mocked Mia just moments before, was speechless. He had never expected anything like this. The woman who had walked onto the stage as a vulnerable young girl had transformed into something far greater. She was not just a girl with a dream. She was a force of nature. Mia finished the song with one final, breathtaking note, and the room remained silent for a brief moment, as if no one dared to break the spell she had cast. Then, as if the entire crowd had been holding their breath, they erupted into applause. It wasn't just polite clapping, it was genuine, heartfelt appreciation. Richard, too, stood up, clapping slowly, a look of awe on his face. The applause was deafening, and for a moment Mia stood there, frozen. She could hardly believe it. The crowd, the powerful and wealthy people who had once looked at her like she was invisible, were now on their feet, cheering for her. The sounds of clapping, whistles, and cheers filled the air, and Mia felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just validation, it was the acknowledgement of her worth. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the one where she finally proved to herself and to the world that she was more than just a girl from a small town with big dreams. But as the applause began to die down, Mia's eyes drifted to Richard Vance. He was still standing, his face a mixture of surprise and reluctant admiration. He had clearly not anticipated this. His eyes flickered with something that almost resembled respect, but Mia could see the remnants of his arrogance still lingering in his posture. He wasn't used to being wrong, and he certainly wasn't used to being outshone. Richard, however, wasn't the type to stay quiet for long. As the applause slowly faded, he stepped forward and took the microphone from the host. His voice, which had been filled with teasing a few minutes ago, was now laced with genuine awe. "Well, Mia," he began, his tone now respectful, "I have to admit, I was wrong. You've certainly proven me wrong. You have something extraordinary, and I believe the world is going to hear about you very soon." Mia smiled politely, though inside she was brimming with pride. She had always known that her talent was special, but to have someone like Richard Vance, a man who had seen the world's greatest artists and musicians, recognize it, was a feeling she couldn't describe. The crowd continued to murmur excitedly, and Mia felt a sense of calm settle over her. She had done it. She had defied expectations, turned the tables, and shown everyone what she was truly capable of. But as the night wore on, something shifted in the atmosphere. There was a new energy in the room, a sense of anticipation, of curiosity, of possibility. Mia had given them a glimpse of her talent, but she knew this was only the beginning. The real challenge had just started. After the performance, Mia found herself surrounded by people who wanted to speak with her. Some were artists, some were producers, and others were simply fans, but they all shared one thing in common. They were all eager to know more about the girl with the voice that could move mountains. Mia didn't know where to begin. She was still processing the events of the evening. It was overwhelming, to say the least. As the evening unfolded, Mia had a few moments to herself. She found herself standing near a large window, overlooking the city lights, deep in thought. She had always dreamed of being on stage, of performing for an audience, of having her voice heard by people who appreciated it. But the reality of it all, the bright lights, the constant attention, was more than she had expected. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. She thought about her family, her mother who had worked 2 jobs to support Mia's education and dreams, her father, who had always believed in her when no one else did, and her little brother, who looked up to her and would tell everyone at school that his sister was going to be famous one day. This was for them. She had made a promise to herself and to them that she would never stop chasing her dream, no matter how hard things got. And now, she was seeing it all start to unfold. But even in this moment of triumph, Mia couldn't ignore the feeling that Richard Vance's words were still ringing in her ears. "You have something extraordinary." She had heard that before from music teachers, from her friends, even from the music producer who had signed her up for this gala. But Richard was different. He was one of the most powerful men in the room, and his words meant more than any compliment she had ever received. As she stood there, lost in thought, a soft voice interrupted her reverie. "You were incredible," said a woman who had come up behind her. Mia turned around to see a well-dressed woman in her mid-30s holding a glass of champagne. "I've never heard anyone sing like that. I'm Karen Foster," the woman introduced herself, offering Mia her hand. Mia shook her hand, still a little in awe of the attention. "Thank you. That means a lot," she said, her voice still a little shaky from the performance. "I'm a talent scout for one of the top labels in the industry," Karen continued, her eyes scanning Mia with a hint of professional interest. "And I'd love to talk to you about a potential deal. You've got something special, and I think we could do something amazing together." Mia's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment she had dreamed about. But she didn't want to get too excited too soon. She had learned the hard way that promises and deals in the music industry could often be empty, and she didn't want to get caught up in the excitement without thinking things through. "Thank you," Mia said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "I'd love to hear more, but I need to think about it first. This is all happening so fast." Karen nodded, understanding Mia's hesitation. "Of course, take your time. I'll give you my card. When you're ready, give me a call. I think you have the potential to go far in this industry, Mia." Mia took the card, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. This was a dream come true, but she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The music industry was notorious for exploiting young talent, and Mia wasn't about to let herself become another casualty of its harsh realities. As the night went on, Mia spoke with a few more people, each conversation a mix of praise, excitement, and offers. But despite all the attention, she couldn't help but think back to the moment when she had stepped on stage. She had faced a room full of the most powerful people in the world, and she had silenced them with nothing more than her voice. That was the moment she would remember. That was the moment that would shape everything to come. As the night grew later, Mia found herself standing by the bar, nursing a glass of water, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The events of the evening had unfolded so quickly, and it all felt like a blur now. People had come and gone, complimenting her, offering business cards, suggesting meetings, and making promises. But amidst it all, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of something much bigger than she had ever anticipated. She had grown up in a small town, where dreams often felt far away, almost unreachable. Her family, though supportive, had never truly understood her drive to sing. Her mother had always encouraged her, but she had also warned Mia about the difficulties of pursuing a career in music. The industry was cutthroat and people could be cruel. But now, standing in the glittering world of the rich and powerful, Mia was realizing how true those warnings had been. This was a place where dreams were made, yes, but also where they could be destroyed in the blink of an eye. The music producer who had first discovered her talent had warned her about the pressures of fame, about the sacrifices she would have to make. But no one had ever warned her about the kind of people she would meet along the way, people like Richard Vance. Richard, with his sharp tongue and his arrogance, had seen her as nothing more than a spectacle, a source of entertainment to amuse the crowd. But when Mia had sung, she had shown him and everyone else that she was far more than that. She wasn't just a girl with a beautiful voice. She was someone who had worked hard for this moment, someone who had poured years of effort and passion into her craft. Mia had learned to silence the doubters and push forward, even when the odds were stacked against her. And tonight, she had finally earned her place in a world that had never truly accepted her. As the crowd around her continued to buzz with excitement, Mia caught sight of Richard again. He was talking to a few people near the stage, but his eyes kept drifting toward her. His earlier expression of surprise had turned into something more complicated, respect perhaps, or maybe a hint of guilt. Mia wasn't sure, but she wasn't interested in figuring it out. Richard's opinion of her no longer mattered. What mattered was the opportunity in front of her. The chance to carve her own path in this world, no matter how difficult it might be. Suddenly, a voice broke through her thoughts. "Excuse me, Mia," a man said, approaching her with a warm smile. Mia turned to face him, and her heart skipped a beat. He was tall, with a kind face, and his eyes seemed to radiate a sincerity that set him apart from the other people she had spoken to that night. "I'm David," he said, extending his hand. "I just wanted to say that your performance was incredible. I've never heard anything like that in my life. You have an incredible gift." Mia smiled shyly, a little taken aback by his genuine praise. "Thank you," she replied. "That means a lot to me." David continued, "I'm a music director with one of the top orchestras in the country, and I'd love to talk to you about collaborating on some projects. I think you have the potential to do something truly unique in the music world, something that hasn't been done before." Mia's mind raced. Another opportunity, another person offering her a chance. It was overwhelming. She had dreamed of this moment, of being approached by the right people who would help her grow and succeed in the industry. But the pressure was starting to feel like a weight on her shoulders. She couldn't make decisions like this on the fly, not without careful thought. "I appreciate that," Mia said, trying to stay calm. "But I need some time to think about everything. This is all happening so fast." David nodded, his smile never faltering. "Of course I understand. Take your time, but don't wait too long. People with your talent don't come around every day. We'd love to have you on board." Mia took the business card he offered, her hands shaking slightly as she held it. As David walked away, she felt both elated and anxious. The opportunities were piling up, but with each one came the realization that she was about to step into a world she barely understood. She had no idea what awaited her, but she knew one thing for sure: the road ahead was going to be far from easy. As the night wore on, Mia found herself standing outside the venue, the cool night air providing a welcome relief from the stuffy ballroom. She needed to clear her head, to process everything. She had worked so hard to get to this point, but now that she was here, she didn't know what to do with it all. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her out of her thoughts. She pulled it out and saw a text message from her mother. "How did it go?" "I'm so proud of you, Mia." Mia smiled, her heart swelling with love. She quickly typed a response. "It went amazing. You won't believe the people I met tonight. This is only the beginning." Her mother's reply came almost instantly. "I knew you had it in you. Don't let anything change who you are. Stay humble." Mia sat back on the curb, her phone in her lap, staring up at the sky. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. Stay humble. It was a reminder to stay grounded, no matter how high she soared. Mia knew that the world would try to change her. The industry would try to mold her into something she wasn't. But she had promised herself, and her family, that she wouldn't lose sight of who she was. The night had been a whirlwind, but Mia had learned one thing above all. She wasn't just a voice. She was someone who had earned the right to be here, someone whose talent was undeniable. She had faced Richard Vance, one of the most powerful men in the room, and had silenced him with nothing more than her voice. And now it was her turn to decide how far she was willing to go. As she stood up, ready to face the future, Mia knew that whatever happened next, she would face it head-on. No more doubting, no more second-guessing. She was ready to take on the world, and nothing would stop her. The next few days felt like a blur. Mia was constantly on the move, meeting with producers, agents, and other key players in the music industry. The attention she had received from the gala hadn't faded. In fact, it seemed to only grow stronger with each passing day. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages and calls, each one offering new opportunities, new avenues for her to explore. The invitations kept pouring in. Meetings with record labels, offers for music collaborations, even a few offers from high-end music video directors. But as much as it was thrilling to be in the spotlight, Mia couldn't ignore the feeling of being overwhelmed. This wasn't the small-town girl she once was. This wasn't the quiet life she had known. She was being thrust into a world where everyone had an agenda, and she was just one of many potential stars. It was exciting, yes, but it was also daunting. She couldn't let herself get lost in the noise. On the third day after the gala, Mia found herself sitting in her small apartment, looking out the window at the busy city below. The quiet, familiar setting felt distant now, as if the world she had known no longer existed. The apartment was still the same, with its simple furniture and sparse decorations, but it suddenly felt too small, too confining. Her mind raced. What was next? Which direction should she go in? The music industry was filled with countless paths, but all of them led to one common destination: fame. But Mia wasn't sure if fame was what she truly wanted. She had dreamed of singing, of sharing her voice with the world, but the reality of it all seemed so different now. It was no longer just about singing. It was about branding, contracts, deals, and promises that were sometimes too good to be true. The thought of signing a deal with one of the major labels had crossed her mind, especially after meeting Karen Foster, the talent scout who had approached her at the gala. Karen had been kind, encouraging, and most importantly, genuine. But Mia didn't want to make a decision in the heat of the moment. She needed time to think, to figure out what path was best for her and her career. Suddenly, Mia's phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw that it was a message from David, the music director she had met after the gala. The message read, "Mia, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to follow up and see if you're still interested in discussing potential collaboration. I think we could create something truly special together. Let me know if you'd like to meet again." Mia stared at the message for a moment, debating whether or not to respond. She knew David was sincere, but she also knew that the music industry was full of people with hidden motives. She couldn't let herself be swept away by the excitement of the moment. She needed to remain grounded and make decisions that were true to her values and goals. Taking a deep breath, Mia set her phone down and turned her attention back to the window. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the city. It was beautiful, but it didn't bring her the peace she was searching for. What did she want? Was it fame, money, the validation of the world's top musicians and billionaires? Or was it something deeper, something more personal? For the first time in a long time, Mia realized that she didn't have all the answers. And that was okay. She had spent so long trying to fit into a mold, trying to meet the expectations of others. But now she needed to take a step back and reflect on her journey. That night, Mia made a decision. She would take a few days away from the hustle and bustle of the city, away from the constant noise of the industry. She would go home to her family, to the place where she had first discovered her love for music. She would remind herself why she started singing in the first place, not for fame, not for validation, but for the sheer joy of creating something beautiful. The next morning, Mia packed a small bag and boarded a train back to her hometown. As the train pulled away from the city, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. The constant pressure, the expectations, the endless meetings, all of it seemed to fade as the landscape outside the window blurred into the distance. She was returning to a place where she could breathe, where she could think clearly and make decisions from a place of strength. When Mia arrived back home, her mother greeted her with a warm hug. "You're home!" "How did everything go?" her mother asked, her eyes sparkling with pride. Mia smiled, grateful for her mother's unwavering support. "It went well, but I needed some time to think. There's a lot happening, and I want to make sure I'm doing this for the right reasons." Her mother nodded understandingly. "You've always known what's best for you, Mia. Whatever you decide, I know it will be the right choice. Just don't forget where you came from, okay?" Mia hugged her mother tightly. "I won't. I promise." Over the next few days, Mia spent her time writing new music, reflecting on her journey and reconnecting with her roots. She spent time with her family, visited old friends, and even performed for a small crowd at a local cafe. It felt different from the gala, but it was fulfilling in a way she hadn't expected. There was no pressure, no expectations. Just her voice and the people who truly cared about her. When Mia returned to the city, she was ready. She had a clearer sense of direction and knew what she needed to do. She wasn't going to let the industry change her. She wasn't going to let it mold her into something she wasn't. She was going to forge her own path, one that stayed true to who she was. Mia began meeting with people again, but this time it was different. She knew what she wanted, and she wasn't afraid to say no to anything that didn't align with her values. She was ready to take control of her future, to make decisions based on her passion, her art, and her heart. And when the time came for her to sign a deal, she did so with confidence. She signed with an independent label, one that believed in her music, her story, and her talent not just as a commodity, but as an artist. Her voice continued to soar and the world was beginning to listen. But Mia never forgot the lesson she had learned that night at the gala. The lesson that talent and hard work were important, but so was staying true to oneself. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but Mia was ready for whatever came next. The weeks that followed Mia's decision were filled with steady progress, but there was a newfound sense of peace within her. She had taken control of her destiny. She wasn't just riding the wave of success that had suddenly come her way. She was steering it, directing it toward the future she wanted. And that future wasn't defined by the fame, fortune, or the approval of billionaires like Richard Vance. It was defined by the music she wanted to create, the stories she wanted to tell, and the artist she wanted to become. The independent label Mia had signed with offered her the creative freedom she'd longed for. Unlike the major labels that were often more concerned with the commercial viability of an artist's image, this label focused on artistry, authenticity, and the long-term growth of its talents. They didn't want to mold her into someone she wasn't. They wanted to amplify what she already was. Mia's first project with the label was a collection of original songs, each one a reflection of her journey, her struggles, and her dreams. The music was raw, emotional, and true to who she was. It wasn't polished for the radio. It wasn't meant to fit into the commercial mode of what was trending. It was a reflection of Mia's voice, powerful, real, and unfiltered. As she spent hours in the studio recording, writing, and refining her songs, Mia realized how much she had grown. The girl who had once been intimidated by the grand ballroom and the billionaires in the room was now a woman who could hold her ground, who could speak her truth through her music. Her confidence grew with each note she sang, each lyric she wrote. And as she poured her heart into every track, she began to understand something deeper about herself. Music had never been just a career or a path to fame. It had always been a way for her to express what words couldn't. It was the language of her soul, a way to connect with others, to touch hearts, to heal wounds. And now, as she stood in the studio, her voice echoing through the speakers, she felt more connected to her true self than ever before. But even as Mia's music began to resonate with a growing audience, she still faced the challenges of the industry. The pressures were constant, the stakes were high, and there were always people trying to influence her direction. But Mia was no longer the naive girl who had been swept into the glamour of the music world. She had learned that true success wasn't about the red carpets, the fancy parties, or the empty promises. It was about staying true to her art and her vision, no matter the obstacles. One of the biggest challenges Mia faced came when her debut album was ready to be released. The label's marketing team was eager to push it to the masses, to create a buzz, to ensure that it reached the largest possible audience. But Mia wasn't interested in chasing trends. She didn't want her music to be a product to be sold. It had to be something deeper, something more authentic. She pushed back against the label's initial plans. They wanted to create a flashy promotional campaign with extravagant photo shoots, brand partnerships, and mainstream media coverage. But Mia stood firm. She didn't want to compromise her message. She wanted her music to speak for itself, without the distraction of commercial noise. The label hesitated at first, concerned about how her unconventional approach would affect sales. But Mia knew that in the long run, staying true to her values would be the only thing that set her apart from the countless other artists in the industry. Eventually, the label agreed to a more understated, organic release. Mia's debut album was launched with minimal fanfare, focusing on intimate performances and grassroots promotion. The response was overwhelming. Fans resonated with the raw emotion of her music, the honesty in her lyrics, and the authenticity that shone through every note. Mia's album didn't just become a commercial success, it became a cultural phenomenon. People from all walks of life connected with her songs, finding solace in the words she had written. The music wasn't just popular, it was transformative. It spoke to something deeper within people, something that couldn't be marketed or manufactured. It was real, and that's what made it unforgettable. As Mia's career continued to rise, she remained grounded. She didn't get caught up in the hype. She didn't let the glitz and glamour of the industry distract her from what truly mattered. She knew that she had been given a platform, a voice, and a chance to make a difference, and she was determined to use it for good. She began using her success to give back to the community that had raised her. She started a foundation to support young, aspiring musicians from underprivileged backgrounds, giving them the resources and opportunities they needed to succeed in the industry. She mentored kids who, like her, had big dreams but lacked the connections and resources to make them a reality. Mia didn't want to just be an artist. She wanted to be a force for positive change in the world. The industry had tried to shape her, to mold her into something she wasn't. But Mia had resisted. She had remained true to herself, to her art, and to the values that had guided her through the toughest moments of her life. And in doing so, she had created something far more meaningful than any record deal, any endorsement, or any amount of fame. Mia's journey wasn't over. There were still challenges ahead, still obstacles to overcome. But as she stood at the edge of her new life, she knew one thing for sure: no matter what happened, she would never stop singing. She would never stop using her voice to tell her story and to inspire others to find their own. And so, as the world continued to listen to her music, Mia remained true to the young girl who had once stood on stage, unsure of herself, and had transformed into an artist who knew exactly who she was and who she was meant to be. The girl who had once been underestimated, mocked, and dismissed was now a force to be reckoned with. She had found her place in the world, and it was hers to shape.